This begins MATH996, fall 2014. Just want to accomplish in the first video introduction to the course and go over the syllabus and then cover some introductory items for the class. So it should be a pretty short video. Guys, the syllabus again. This is your Research 1 course. It's a 2-credit hour course. You're stuck with me. And there's my contact information. The catalog description, this is the first course of a 3-course sequence. And this is where we introduce you to the research process. And ultimately, you are going to decide on a research project topic, which will be done in group setting. I prefer groups of 2, but you know, we may go groups of 2, groups of 3 if needed. You're going to need to collect and analyze data, and ultimately you'll present your results both orally and in writing. Course goals and objectives for this course, not necessarily the entire sequence. Those are provided there. I'm not going to read those to you, but this is what I want you to be able to do by the time you finish this class. Your grading, I expect there's going to be a midterm exam, probably a final exam / project. I haven't really decided yet on that. There's going to be assignments. I don't know how many. This course, this class is new. I've never taught something like this, so we're going to kind of learn together. So I'm not really sure yet how many assignments. I assumed over a 15-week period. They're going to be, I would think, somewhere 6, 7, maybe 8 assignments, something about every 2 weeks. And you know, your midterm exam and final project. I'm kind of thinking about some things, but I don't know whether to tell you about those just yet, so that's why I'm kind of hesitating. First thing, before I get into the mathematics education journals, we need to, again, finalize our 2 dates for on-campus sessions. There's a chance we may need 3 dates for the MATH6996, but I think for this class we can clearly get away with just 2 dates. However, obviously, if we meet 3 dates for 6500, those of you that are in both courses, it would be open a time that we could openly discuss issues in this class too. Now, guys, listen very closely here. Some of your approaches are really going to have to change in this class, even versus 6500. In 6500, I'm still going to be like a teacher role. In that, if you get into a frustrating moment, it's very, very natural, and I saw this happen last semester a couple of times in quantitative methods. It's very natural to just throw that back onto the professor. Let the professor figure it out. This is your fault. You know, I don't know what I'm doing here. It's all your fault. And I understand, because that has to do with the frustrations of learning. And as a professor now for 25 years, well, that's crazy. But for 25 years, you know, I'm used to that. I'm accustomed to it, and I know how to react. Having said that, this course is going to change. My attitude, my approach to those types of issues will completely change. For example, if I have you do something and you get on the internet and you look for, you know, 5, 10, 15 minutes and you can't find anything, chances are it's going to be tempting to you and natural for you to email me and say, well, I can't find anything. I don't know. Guys, this course moves you into becoming an independent researcher. Focus on the word independent. Now, guys, I'm not going to throw you to the wolves in this class. I'm going to be there through thick and thin. I'm going to be beside you. But in some ways, this class, I'm going to start creating a separation from you and me, where you are more independent, and you're, I guess, depending less on me. As I reflect back on my 2 experiences similar to this. I remember in my master's thesis, and then of course for my dissertation for my PhD, I remember being kind of treated the same way by my dissertation advisor and my master's thesis advisor, but not as much there because that was mathematics research. And I would contact him and have questions typical to the things that I would ask in like a regular class. And he was very vague when he would get back with me. And I couldn't understand why he was doing it. In fact, I thought a couple of times, does this guy not like me? But as I reflect on it, it's just part of the process. Sometimes it's very frustrating, and we have to spend hours and hours and hours on the internet getting the answer to a very, very simple question. And you know what? I may know the answer to the question, and I can give you the answer in maybe 30 seconds. But you know what? I probably won't. Just to get you familiar with the the loneliness, if you will, of research. You may question, send me a question on email, and I might respond like, keep searching, be patient, have fun, and something of that nature. So I want you to have that on your radar because it's very, very natural to be dependent upon your professor or teacher. I'm sure that your high school students are dependent upon you. My college undergraduate students are, and even my graduate students, and you guys haven't been from time to time, but quite often, and you should have. I mean, that's my job. But this is a place where the approach is going to change. All right, gang. On your radar, you have to start thinking about these mathematics education journals. The one that I refer to the most is the Journal for Research in Mathematics Education. It's through the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. It is good stuff. Another one I'm not as familiar with is Mathematics Education Research Journal. I've cited things from that journal. It's good. Primus through AMS, the American Mathematical Society. Also a very, very good journal. In fact, I'm doing some stuff on college placement right now, something that you guys may be interested in considering for your master's thesis. But anyway, there have been a couple of really cool articles recently on approach to getting students in their in the appropriate first math class in college. Guys, the Journal of Mathematics Teacher Education, I'm not as familiar with that. I've been told that there's some pretty good stuff there. The College Mathematics Journal and Math Horizons through MAA, these are probably less research focused. They're probably not going to help you as much in the goals of your research project. But I put that I just put them there because sometimes you can read things like this to get some ideas, even though they may not present research. Math Horizons has all kinds of cool activities, and maybe you can look at an activity and think, how could that be used in the context that we're seeking in this class. So, for the most part, you probably focus on the first three: the Journal for Research in Mathematics Education, Mathematics Education Research Journal, and Primus. Okay. Now, introduction. How do we know when something is true? How do we know, something? And we typically define knowledge as a justifiable belief or a justified true belief. I want you to start thinking about, how are educators, what does that say? How are educators to know? Oh, okay, how are they to know what is true? And how do we acquire reliable information? I'm always reminded of a quote by Einstein. It was one of the final books written on his life, and he was being interviewed for this book, and they asked Dr. Einstein, in his opinion, what was the difference between people of average intelligence and people of, at kind of his level, because it was clear throughout his experiences he had worked with a lot of people of relatively high intelligence. He thought for a second, and what he came back with was quite unique in typical Einstein fashion. He said, the people I work with of higher intelligence tend to say, I don't know, more often. And you kind of think it'd just be the opposite. People with high intelligence, you think that they have the answers to all the problems. But it doesn't work that way. I think as I've become, through my education, I think I've become, a little smarter, if you will. And I think one of the hurdles to getting over that kind of becoming a little more intelligent, I kind of hate that phrase, but is just being able to realize and appreciate and accept what I don't know. Just because I think something doesn't make it knowledge. Just because I've lived something doesn't necessarily make it true. Maybe and we'll talk about that in just a second, a little bit more about experience and authority. So speaking of, there are many sources of knowledge. We acquire knowledge through experience, and sometimes we try to acquire knowledge through authority. But what I want you to focus on in this class is scientific inquiry. And I think we're going to, hopefully by the end of the class, we all agree that scientific inquiry into education problems provides the most valuable source of knowledge to educators for decision making. I can tell you firsthand, educators aren't always influenced, nor do they stop to consider the results of carefully planned research. Some of my most respected colleagues at Shawnee State University could care less about what the research says. They rely totally on experience and from authority, what they've been told to be true in the past. So I want to address that. What happens with experience? Well, as I say, their experience is a familiar and well-used source of knowledge. Through personal experience, we can find the answers to many questions we face. A simple example that comes to mind for me is when I drive to Portsmouth. There are many, many, many routes that I could take. In fact, I can sit here and think of about 10 routes and not even really give it much thought. Well, I like to take the most effective route. Now, does that mean the quickest? Possibly. Does it mean the safest? Well, that's also a situation. So over the 20 years that I've been at Shawnee, I can use my experience and I've actually got from all the 10 kind of possible routes, I've got it down to 4 reasonable routes. Through my personal experience, I've kind of answered my question on which one of these routes seems most reasonable and is the best for me. Now, second quote there, much wisdom is passed from generation to generation via experience. For example, if someone from my hometown would happen to take a job at Shawnee State University, probably not very likely, but if this happened, I would share my experiences with them. And of course, the final bullet, learning from experience is a prime characteristic of intelligent behavior. I think it would be advantageous and intelligent, if you will, to share this with other people in similar situations. Limitations. People are different. So how they're affected by an event may be different. I'm reminded of a situation where a respected colleague of mine, we were observing a student teacher. And I observed the student teacher on one day, and about a week later, my colleague went and observed the teacher. And we met and we shared our beliefs. Well, I thought this was a very, very good teacher, and my colleague thought that this person was a horrible teacher. So it was, we were both very experienced. We both really shared a lot of common views on what was good teaching and bad teaching, but it was really strange on how we felt so differently about this person's approach toward teaching. I give a little quote there. I said a delightful sanctuary to one person, maybe a menacing wilderness to another. I stole that from somebody. I'm sure I wasn't clever enough to come up with that one, but it's something I've stored in my trash can of useless information. And guys, quite frankly, many times you need to know things that just simply cannot be learned through experience. Another source that we rely on is authority. And we look for people who have an expertise to kind of lend us a source of providing the truth. This is... I probably shouldn't even tell you this story because it makes me look like an idiot. But I remember in graduate school one time, this is actually my PhD program, we were talking about, just casually, this was actually before class, we were talking about where algebra should be brought into the curriculum. And at that time, and even today slightly, I feel that we bring algebra into the curriculum too early. Now, I think there are tons of stuff we could do at the 7th and 8th grade in terms of problem solving and getting students to explore and becoming, arithmetically sound, which I don't think students are arithmetically sound. I think we try to get them into the big boy, big girl stuff as quickly as possible, when there's a part of me that thinks if we were just a little bit more patient with that and built a better foundation of arithmetic and reasoning and logic and thought and problem solving and those kinds of things, that we would build, we would not be building a house on sand, so to speak. Now, do I know that to be true? No, that's just an opinion. But we were sitting around talking about something like this before class one day, and the people there completely disagreed with me. Well, I played the authority card, and at that time I'd been teaching a long time. I had taught more math than all of the other people had taught put together. And I played that card. And my professor who was there made me feel like a complete idiot. I was pissed off at him. The whole drive home, I was thinking, you SOB, But as I reflect on that today, he was right. Just because I had taught more math than everyone else in that room, did that really make me an authority? Well, yeah, it kind of did make me an authority. But did it mean I knew everything? No, it actually didn't. And instead of me sitting there presenting my facts as an authority and supposedly to be assumed and received as knowledge, I should have just said, well, my opinion is this. Guys, limitations on authority. First of all, how do we know the experts know what they're talking about? That's something that you run into a lot. Experts can be wrong. And the third bullet there, authorities disagree. My doctoral advisor was the statistics director for SIMS and TIMS, which is the second and third international mathematics study. And he told the story many, many times about he and I think there were 19 other people on the statistics committee. And none of them could agree. They couldn't come to a consensus on how they were going to conduct, well, this is lovely. For some reason, all right, well, Tanya's Fitbit update came up, and it happened to be more important than what I'm doing here. So, but anyway, he talked about there being 20 people on the statistics committee, and they met, and he said, about $1.2 million later, they still hadn't come up with a way to analyze the data that they all agreed on. So ultimately, what ended up happening is he and one other person met kind of privately, came up with the plan, and that's what they used. So guys, authorities disagree. And if you ever sit in a department meeting for the Department of Mathematics at Shawnee State University, you'll see evidence of that, and you probably see it in your own department meetings. Guys, authority is closely related to custom and tradition. Custom is something I find extremely interesting. tradition as well. How have things been done in the past? That tends to be a driving force between or in the process of deciding what's knowledge, what's to be accepted. The problem with this is in the examination of the history of education, many traditions that prevailed for years were later shown to be slightly ridiculous. One that comes to mind there, I don't know if any of you remember the dunce cap. If you did something silly in class, you'd have to go over and stand in a corner and put the dunce cap on, and it was supposed to some way psychologically motivate students to do better. Well, research shows a little bit later on that that's ridiculous, and that did nothing more than just humiliate most students and separate them from the learning process. I even had a teacher one time, I think second, third grade, that if you did anything wrong, she would go over and draw a circle on the wall, and you'd have to go over there and stand so long with your nose in the circle. That's education at its best via authority. So guys, first assignment. What do I want you to do? First thing, I'm gonna, I gave you a list of journals, but I want you to search a journal in the Journal for Research in Mathematics Education, and this is via NCTEM. Now, how are you going to access this? Well, guys, that's up to you. You gotta come up with this on your own. You may need to talk to your librarian at your school. You may need to talk to the librarian at Shawnee State University. Maybe you want to become a member of NCTM and sign up for this journal. Maybe you want to sabotage a site online to where you get free access to the journals here. I don't know. Actually, I do know, but this is a place where you're going to have to figure that out. What I'm telling you is you need to have access to the Journal for Research in Mathematics Education via NCTM. Hopefully you're a member of NCTM, which I think would be definitely recommended at least. But I want you to find something. I want you to critique it. Now, the expectations for this, I want it to be appropriate, meaning that it's an appropriate level for where we're headed in this class. And overall, we've got a broad acceptability here. We are just looking at something that even within a stretch of imagination can be a research, a scientific inquiry that can be used to improve instruction, improve the quality of education, improve programs. You've got a lot of flexibility in the final topic that you come up with for your research project. The first thing I want you to do is when you complete this, is to submit a thorough critique in writing. Email it to me. Obviously, I need the journal article name. I need the journal it's in. I need the page. I need the information. And then probably a page and a half, 2 pages, critique. Tell me what you got from the journal article. Guys, we got to come up with a couple of things. We have to come up with a time to have regular Google Hangout meetings. The first one, I want you to share with me and the rest of the class what you found through your critique. So, in other words, you're going to provide the critique to me in writing, and then you're going to provide the critique orally at our first Google Hangout session. So guys, y'all need to get with me and tell me a time throughout the week that you think would be a good time for us to meet. So we'll probably have these sessions once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. As an afterthought, some of you still haven't contacted me regarding dates that you can meet for on-campus sessions. For this class, there will only be 2. I'm thinking October 15th and December the 13th. And December the 13th is going to happen. So put that on your agenda. Finally, at the bullet, there's an article that I really like, and it can be found at the ams.org site. and you'll have to carefully type this into your browser. It's rather lengthy. It's going to take you about an hour, hour and a half to read it. Well, no, it's not. It's probably going to take you about 45 minutes to read it. But I want you to read that, and guys, when I ask you to read something, there could be an accountability factor there in terms of questions coming up on exams or something like that. So, guys, please do what I ask you to do. So that's the end of this this video. Don't hesitate to call me, email me, whatever if you have questions. So, guys, have a good one.